Hi, this is my review of Many Ways to Die. Many Ways to Die is a collection of 3 solo adventures for Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls. But you can also play these adventures with Tunnels and Trolls 5.5 and above. This review is going to be spoiler free. I'm not even going to use images. So any climactic moments and key encounters of the adventures are going to remain a secret. You will still be surprised when you play these adventures. Now let's talk about the quality of the PDF. The quality isn't really good, it's just barely decent in my opinion because, well, let's talk about the positive things first. The illustrations are quite appropriate for the themes of the adventures. They look somewhat psychotic. They have these characters with huge bulging eyes and with crazy smiles, kind of like that. And overall, I think the illustrations are the more positive side when it comes to the quality of this PDF. But the PDF doesn't have bookmarks. It doesn't have hyperlinks. In general, it's well written, but there are some confusing things. So some special rules or subsystems of the different adventures will not be explained quite clearly. I did find a significant amount of typos and errors, and I even found missing entries, which is quite devastating for an adventure. It's like a broken adventure. So for example, in the third adventure in page 77, I think it was entry 29 and 30 were missing. And in page 76, there's an error in entry 21, I think. So I don't know if it was an inside joke, but they are basically missing entries. You cannot run the adventure in a proper way if you decided to choose a particular path or action and it takes you nowhere. So that's quite negative when it comes to the quality. The quality in general, I did not like it at all. And with the lack of hyperlinks and bookmarks, it's quite difficult to navigate the entire PDF when you're playing the adventures. Now let's talk about the contents. As I was saying, you have 3 adventures. The first one, which is called Flea Bitten, Neither Here Nor There, is an underwater adventure, and out of the 3 adventures, I like this one the most. What I liked about this adventure is that you have a bit more freedom of choice when compared to the other adventures. And I think it communicates the vulnerability of a human going underwater in a very exciting way. You never know what's going to happen. You can imagine the ocean with its dark depths, and you don't know what type of monsters or creatures are hidden there. I also liked that you have a lot of non-player character interaction. And another cool thing is that at the end of this adventure of Flea Bitten, you have a lot of advice on how to run the adventure as a game master adventure, and that's excellent. I think that's a very good thing about this adventure is that I've never seen a Tunnels and Trolls adventure that has such a detailed explanation on how to convert a solo adventure to a game master adventure. But now let's talk about the negative things of Flea Bitten. Something that really harms the pacing of the adventure is that you have to generate characters throughout the adventure. As I was telling you, there is a lot of non-player character interaction, but you have to generate those characters as you find them, so it kind of breaks the pace because you're having different fights, or you're exploring underwater tunnels and such, and suddenly, oh, you found this non-player character, and you're like, roll the character's stats, and you have to pause the adventure to generate this character. And it's not just 1 or 2, you have like 5 or 6, so it's somewhat annoying to do that. Also, some of the choices within the adventure feel artificial, because maybe you have choice A and choice B, and you decide, well, I'm going to do this, choice A, and it takes you to C. And then you play the adventure later on again, and you're like, oh, okay, this time I'm going to choose B. and you pick choice B, and it takes you to C. Oh, it's ridiculous, and some of the battles are also, they feel somewhat like an autopilot, too automatic. That is, you find in this monster, and oh, this monster has this special attack, fight that monster, and if you dealt this amount of damage, go to this entry or whatever, and you go to that entry, and well, do you remember that special attack the enemy was going to do? Well, it hits you anyway. So that's quite ridiculous. Again, it's such a bummer. I also didn't like it that some of the prizes and treasure, weapons, armor feel like rushed. They don't have all the stats, how much weight units each weapon has, because in Tunnels and Trolls I actually like to keep track of the encumbrance, because it has some effects on your character. It feels more tactical as you move along the adventure, but here you only have like the damage of the said weapon. Maybe it's something particular of Deluxe of Tunnels and Trolls 5.5, but in Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls you have this weight unit system, and I think the weapons should have been more detailed. But maybe you don't like encumbrance, maybe you will like it. But another thing that I disliked of the different things that you can get in this adventure is that they feel unbalanced, and this may sound a bit ridiculous considering Tunnels and Trolls is somewhat of a easygoing game. That is, there is room to create your own stuff, to use so many crazy things and effects. But something that I liked is that I found these weapons that had a certain structure to them, so that you actually felt like they were useful but not overpowered. And some of these weapons just feel too overpowered, and at the same time wishy-washy at times. It's quite hard to explain, but it feels like something that just the designer like, oh, this type of weapon would be cool, but he didn't think of the consequences later on, or this type of arm or whatever. And so in general, this adventure is somewhat decent. Another thing that I didn't like of Flea Bitten is that you feel forced to follow a certain path. It's not like it's a railroad way, but for example, in other Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls adventures, you never know when the adventure is going to end, for better or for worse. And that's quite exciting, because you have these choices and you're like, if I make the wrong choice, the adventure is going to end, and maybe I will get treasure and adventure points, but I will miss out on earning more when getting more adventure points or some more powerful treasure with structure. But here you feel like you have to play the adventure until the very end through the longest path, and I didn't like it. So in general, but when compared to the other two adventures, this is the best one of the bunch. Now let's talk about the second adventure, Deathbed. What I liked of this adventure is that the theme is quite creepy in a Halloween sort of way. It's somewhat moody, but at the same time it has a comical flair to it. But when it comes to the things that I liked, that's basically it. And perhaps the beginning of the adventure, where something quite unexpected happens to your character, and you have to play quite differently from what you would expect in a Tunnels and Trolls adventure. But the explanation of the subsystem of Deathbed is quite wonky. It's not clear. It's going to have you scratching your head a bit, and you will probably end up using your own interpretation of this subsystem. There's even like a comment saying like, oh, if something doesn't make sense, play it as you like. And that's, I would have preferred more structure, because there are so many cool Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls adventures, such as Buffalo Castle, a classic, probably the very first solo Tunnels and Trolls adventure. You have Bedlam. You have so many cool adventures, and they have that sense of structure within the craziness of the things that happen. But here, it all feels quite rushed. And so in Deathbed, you have this confusing subsystem to go through the adventure. And some other thing that I disliked of Deathbed is that you have this sort of like a hub that reminds me quite a bit of the Trick or Treat adventure from this same company of kaboom press, and it falls into the same negative things of that adventure. You basically have like a hub, like a main area, and you have to go to different places from that central hub, and you feel again you feel forced to follow a specific way to finish the adventure, and that wouldn't be such a negative thing if it weren't so repetitive. It feels like it's the same encounter over and over and over and over again, just with different things. That is, they're going to change the non-player characters, but aesthetically, superficially, they don't have like I think that really makes them special. You also have to generate those non-player characters as you play the adventure. It really breaks the pacing, and there's basically no way to finish Deathbed if you don't follow that excruciating process of going to the central hub, going to this area, going back to the central hub, going to this area, going back to the central hub all the time. And so Deathbed, I didn't like it, and the rewards for finishing Deathbed, again, they feel too crazy, unbalanced, then they don't feel fun at all, and they even feel like they break the game a bit, that they give you quite a bit of an advantage at times. So I didn't actually like Deathbed. There's actually a way for your character to suffer quite a radical transformation, but it could have been handled so much better instead of adding these rules or subsystems that feel almost broken. And then you have the adventure Constant Vigil, and I think this one is the worst of the adventures, basically because of this. The theme, you're basically a guard protecting a very important event, the arrival of a person, of a VIP, but it's too on rails. It's too rigidly on rails. And that's funny because some adventures that are on rails could actually be rescued or saved if there are different ways to change the rails, so to speak. Like, for example, you're going on top of some sort of like a minecart, and like in a video game, you see like a lever of sorts or some switch, and you can switch rails and still get to the end. That is the same destination through a different rail, but here it's just one rail. And it feels so random, and that you have no choice at all on how to play this adventure. Imagine playing an adventure where you have no choices, or maybe one or two significant choices, and everything is just a random roll. It kind of feels like you're playing those kiddie board games that it's all rolling dice, that get from point A to point B. Let's see who has more luck rolling the dice. So I didn't like it at all. And as I was telling you, it's a broken adventure. There are missing entries. There were the few choices that I could actually make. They took me to a part where there wasn't an entry. They said like go to entry 30 or something, and there was no entry 30. So I had to randomly pick some other entry. And the boss fight, at least again, it felt quite confusing. Even unbalanced for the level that is recommended for this particular adventure. You're not exactly sure how to handle the appearance of certain non-player characters, and if you actually finish the adventure, which, as I was telling you, feels quite unbalanced and wonky, because you have to pick a random entry if you didn't, because there is no entry for what you decided to choose. The rewards are insanely unbalanced, and it's just, I don't know what they were thinking when they designed this adventure. Imagine that you were playing Dungeons and Dragons at first level, and you completed a dungeon, and the dungeon master said, you found 1 billion gold pieces, or something like that, and you're going to be like, what? So it makes no sense at all, and the rewards are exaggerated. So in general, this is probably the worst adventure of the three. Now let me tell you what I think of this collection of adventures. Well, I didn't like it really. The only one that was somewhat acceptable was the first one, Flea Bitten. I think that adventure, Flea Bitten, is sold separately. If you really want to try an underwater adventure of Tunnels and Trolls, you should get that one separately. but I wouldn't recommend getting this collection of 3 adventures unless it's on. I would say unless it's on sale, but I simply I am almost terrified of playing Deathbed and Constant Vigil again because I was so bored when playing those 2 adventures. And as I was telling you, Flea Bitten is somewhat decent, but this is it got so bad to the point that I wouldn't play Deathbed or Constant Vigil. Even if they paid me like I'll pay you $2 to play Deathbed and Constant Vigil while watching me or taking my time or whatever, I wouldn't do it. I didn't like them. But as I was telling you, if you're actually you think that the Underwater Adventure theme is cool, you should get Flea Bitten separately. Well, thanks for watching this review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.